Let's read this article from Vanguard on planning for long-term care. Actually, one of the better articles out there that I've seen. I forgot who emailed this to me, but mucho gracias to you, my friend. This is actually good stuff here. So, Dateline. I don't see a dateline on here, but it's relatively recent, and I'll put a link in the show notes for this so you can read it yourself. All right. So from Vanguard, planning for long-term care. One aspect of retirement health care gets even more attention than the rest. Long-term care, exactly. How is it different from regular health care, and how can you prepare? A separate piece of your retirement health care plan. Aside from the ongoing regular health care, you should plan for the possibility that you'll need long-term care at some point. And let's start with the positive. Almost half of retirees don't need to pay for long-term care. Half, in fact, if you look at other studies, we see it's about half have no expenditures at all for long-term care, none. But for those who do, it can get pricey because Medicare doesn't cover it. Just had an email sent to me from some guy. He said, "I noticed you talked about." What did he say? I talked about. I forgot. I forgot. He said, but it's almost like a criticism. Like you talk about this, but you didn't talk about that. I was like, huh? I said, dude. It's like one of my life insurance videos. He said, you didn't talk about long-term care. The insinuation was I'm holding myself at risk by not discussing long-term care. I said, man, and just a side note. I've had people try to sell me on the proposition as me being an advisor, not just me, but other, that what you got to do is you got to take out this piece of paper and have people sign it that say to your clients that you discuss long-term care and your client denied it. Does that make sense? And the reason to do that, they're saying it's to shield you from the likelihood of you being sued by their children when they inevitably need long-term care. But it's a scare tactic. I don't like that stuff. It's a scare tactic. It says, look, Mrs. Smith, I'm going to have you sign this paper because you're saying you don't want to buy long-term care insurance, and I need to remove myself from the liability. I find that to be very sheepish, just sales pitch that I don't like. All right, and if you go to a guy or a lady and they're saying, "Hey, we got to talk long-term care," and then you say, "I don't want long-term care," and then they kind of sheepishly pull out this sheet that's okay. Well, I need you to sign here that we discuss it, and you weren't interested in it. I find that to be sales stuff that I don't like. And so, anyway, if you're talking to somebody and they say, "Well, look, 55%," I tell you, man, I think you should find another advisor. I really, really do. Nothing should be done salesy from a fear perspective. Now, you can certainly say, "Hey, Josh, if you were to have long-term care need, have a 49-year-old with 4 kids, how are you protected?" That's a good question, but if it comes out like they're preying on your fear, like, "Oh, Josh, you realize you could have long-term care," that's not the right answer, man. It's the right answer, like, hey, what's the plan of action in case this were to happen? In a conversational way, not like, ooh, if you got hit by the bus today, your kids could be doomed. I don't like that at all. All right, so let's talk about what is long-term care. Long-term care is ongoing help with daily activities. It's not temporary nursing. Remember, it's caring versus curing. So going to a hospital is curing, and thus Medicare covers for it. Going to a facility is caring, or even in-home healthcare is caring, and thus Medicare does not cover it. I hope that makes sense. I had one lady really upset. She goes, Medicare does cover some of it. Yes, there will be some Medicare does. I think it's like 90 days. There's a deductible or something like that. Man, we're talking long-term care, all right? That's short-term care. We're talking long-term care. They're caring for many, many months, if not years. Medicare does not cover it. She was really upset on YouTube, saying, basically saying you're what was that? Undercutting Medicare. I can't remember. The whole thing was weird to me. It's like, we're talking long-term care. Medicare does cover short-term. All right, so anyway, the long-term care is ongoing with needing help with 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. It lasts for months or years, and it's for someone who isn't expected to recover and live without this care. Again, caring, we're being cared for the rest of our lives versus curing. The number one condition that needs for long-term care is dementia, stroke, Parkinson's disease, or osteoarthritis, and other common reasons. Consider whether you and your family have a history of these conditions. How much would you spend? All right, to start answering that question, you need to think about whether anyone in your life that would help you, usually a spouse or child. Women are much more likely to need long-term care for more than 5 years, mainly because they're most likely to outlive their spouses. Most men married down, not all, but most, the majority of people who marry down are going to be men marrying younger women because women mature quicker. Charlotte is 4 years younger than I. She's younger. She's going to live longer than me because she's a woman. Thus, she'll take care of me and clean my diapers, and no one's going to be there for her. What type of care? Well, other than the kids, if they want. What type of care would you want? That's a big difference between a shared room in a basic nursing home versus a private room in an upscale facility versus in-home care. So we have assisted living nursing home cares, all right? We have shared room, maybe a private room in one of those places. Then you have a continuing care retirement community, an upscale community, and then you have in-home health care. 3 different mechanisms here. What expenses could you cut to offset the long-term care expenses? For example, people who need long-term care probably aren't spending much on travel and entertainment. If those costs are a big part of your budget, it might mean you have less extra to cover. Or let's put it this way, if you need to go into a nursing home, you're not spending on your home because you're going to sell it. Where you'll be living, right here. These costs vary widely on location. So if you're planning to relocate, take that in consideration. In general, care is more expensive in Alaska and Hawaii, followed by West Coast and Northeast. Half pay nothing on long-term care costs. 26% pay less than $100,000. 11% pay less than $250,000. 15% pay $250,000. And this is from the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Valuation issue brief from ASPE, the Assistant Secretary for Planning and Valuation. All right, so that's just one. Actually, let me read this real quick. I'm going to pause. I'm going to read this chart is because that's a lot more. I don't want to say doomsday, but I've read other studies that are anywhere near this. So hold on just a sec. All right, well, when I said read chart description, it didn't take me to a link. It just took me this. So at the end of the day, let's just use this for now. We'll say that's full 50, 70. So basically 3/4 of people who are turning age 65 will pay, or I'm not going to read the article, but anyway, 3/4 of people who turning 65 between 2015 and 19, I guess estimates will pay, but less than $100,000. All right, so 3/4 of the people there. If you take 85% will pay less than $250,000. And if you got your home, say it's worth $200,000, I mean that's a pretty high probability you're going to pay less than what your home is worth, if that makes sense. So, I mean, again, I'm not trying to make light of this, but let's just put it in realistic terms. You have a home, you're most likely going to pay less than what your home is worth if you need to sell it. In a good amount of time, you're going to pay nothing at all. Since it's impossible to know whether you'll have these types of expenses, you may not want or be able to save enough for the worst case scenarios. Here are some common options. Your home. This is why I like this article. If you have a permanent need for long-term care, you may not need a separate dwelling anymore. Exactly. If your home is paid off, you can plan to sell it and use the equity if needed. Could not agree more. I don't get why that's not part of the conversation. So good on Vanguard for bringing it into it. This could also free you from real estate taxes, utilities, and also other housing-related costs, i.e. the most expensive costs that you have, housing costs. If you sell your home to go to a facility, you don't have all those housing costs. Well, you're going to the facility instead, but it's not like you're adding to your costs that you already have. You're reducing your costs. Essentially, I don't want to say side. You're adding to your costs, certainly, because it's not cheap to go to these places, but you're reducing the biggest cost that you already have, which is housing. And on top of that, you're selling your house. An income annuity. These annuities won't pay for long-term care specifically, but they'll guarantee you don't run out of money. And I don't like that. So, I mean, I like income annuities. I'm just not sure I'd use that specifically for the idea of paying for long-term care. Long-term care insurance. If you buy a long-term care policy, it will pay for some of these costs. Keep in mind there are often waiting periods that usually is the deductible for when Medicare kicks in from 0 to 90 days. And I think from 90 to 100 days is significantly on you. And then after like 100 days, it's almost exclusively on you. So I think Medicare usually kicks in for the first 90 days. After that, that's why you have a 90-day waiting period, essentially. A deductible for your long-term care kicks in. Keep in mind there are often waiting periods. Oh, we were talking about that. Once you're older in your mid-60s or not in good health, premiums for a new policy are usually too expensive to be worth it. Wow, I'm surprised Vanguard's stating that outright. I could not agree more. Good on them. Medicaid, the government health insurance program that covers low-income Americans, will pay for long-term care, but generally after you've exhausted your other assets. Yep. How long-term care is paid for in the U.S.? 53% of the people who pay for it. Again, 53% of the people who pay for it, and half the people don't pay for it, pay out of pocket. 34% are on Medicaid. 10% is Medicare the first 90 days, and only 3% private insurance. So you can see that right there. So that's the vast majority of people who are 65 and above will pay for it out of pocket without question, because the majority, basically half of those people pay nothing at all. Anyway, so if all these people are paying out of pocket and we don't have any instances at all of destitute Americans, it just shows you it should not be a big concern. It just shouldn't be. Get your personalized healthcare estimate. All right, that's where these kind of sell their services. Anyway, I thought it was a pretty good article. So that's planning for long-term care. I agree. Good stuff from Vanguard. They got I want to read this one next. Healthcare costs and retirement. That's a good one too. So we'll go into that next. So stay tuned.